The wind came first, not the knock, not the sound of boots on frozen wood, or the desperate rasp of knuckles against pine. The wind arrived hours before any of that, rolling down from the Rockies like a living thing with teeth and purpose. It rattled the cabin windows and their frames pressed against the logs until they creaked, turned the Montana darkness into something dense and suffocating. Ellie Castellano stood at her workbench, hands moving with the kind of precision that came from muscle memory older than thought. Sandpaper against oak. Slow circles. The grain revealed itself gradually under her calloused palms, patterns hidden in the wood that most people never bothered to find. She'd been working on this piece for 3 weeks. A chair back. Simple. Clean lines. The kind of furniture that would outlast the person who made it. That was the point. Her workshop occupied half the cabin's main room. Tools hung on pegboard walls in perfect order. Clamps, chisels, hand planes worn smooth from decades of use. Everything had its place. Everything stayed where it belonged. In the 18 months since she'd walked away from the Navy, since she'd turned in her Trident and disappeared into these mountains, order was the only thing that kept the chaos at bay. The lamp over her bench cast a circle of warm light against the surrounding darkness. Beyond that circle, the cabin dissolved into shadows. Wood stove in the corner, radiating heat that barely touched the cold pressing in from outside. Small kitchen table. 2 chairs, though she never had visitors. Couch salvaged from a yard sale in Missoula, covered with a wool blanket that had seen better days. And Titan. The German shepherd lay near the stove, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed in that way dogs have of seeming asleep while staying completely aware. 6 years old. 75 pounds of muscle and scar tissue and loyalty so absolute, it bordered on supernatural. His coat was still thick with the colors of his working day's black saddle across his back, tan legs, that distinctive dark mask across his face. But the ears had scars now. Small notches along the edges where shrapnel had kissed him, in places that still ached when the weather turned. Ellie knew she had scars in the same places. She paused in her sanding, studying the wood grain. The pattern reminded her of water, of currents moving beneath a surface no one could see. She'd been a combat medic for 11 years. Navy SEAL, one of the first women to earn the Trident, though that distinction had never mattered much to her. What mattered was the work, keeping people alive when everything around them was designed to do the opposite. She'd been good at it, too good maybe. Good enough that when her last deployment ended and they'd offered her another contract, another tour, another chance to fix broken bodies in broken places, she'd said no. Not because she was afraid. Fear was a tool, not an obstacle. You learned to use it or it used you. No, she'd walked away because she'd started to forget what it felt like to build something instead of just preventing things from falling apart. Started to forget what her hands could do, besides apply pressure to wounds and tie tourniquets and calculate dosages in the dark while someone screamed. So now she made furniture. The wind hammered against the north wall. Snow had been falling for 6 hours, the kind of late March storm that caught people off guard. Most folks thought Montana winter ended in February, maybe early March if you were unlucky. Most folks were wrong. Ellie had seen snow in May, had seen drifts pile 8 feet high against her cabin door and not melt for a week. She didn't mind. Isolation had a particular quality up here. A weight. It pressed down on you until you either learned to carry it or it crushed you into leaving. Ellie had learned to carry heavier things. Titan's ears flicked. The movement was subtle. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But Ellie had worked with military dogs for 5 years before she'd met Titan, and she knew their language better than she knew human speech. Ears forward meant attention. Ears back meant stress. Ears flicking, rotating like tiny radar dishes, meant the dog was processing something, sorting threat from non-threat, danger from weather. She set down her sandpaper. "What is it, boy?" Titan didn't move. His eyes opened fully now, amber in the lamplight fixed on the door. His tail remained still. Not wagging, not tucked, just waiting. Ellie wiped her hands on her jeans and crossed to the window. The glass was cold enough to burn. Outside, the world had disappeared into white. Snow fell in sheets driven horizontal by wind that had to be pushing 40 miles an hour. Her truck was already buried to the wheel wells. The woodshed was a vague shape in the darkness. Everything beyond 20 feet had ceased to exist. Nothing out there. Nothing could be out there in this. She turned back to her bench. Titan stood. The movement was immediate. No stretching, no yawning, no slow gathering of limbs, the way dogs usually rise from rest. One moment he was lying down. The next he was on his feet, body coiled, head lowered, slightly eyes locked on the door. Ellie's hand dropped to her hip. No weapon there. Hadn't carried one in 18 months. Hadn't needed to. But the instinct remained buried so deep in her nervous system that conscious thought couldn't override it. Threat response. Assess, arm, engage. She forced her hand to relax. Easy, she said quietly. Titan's lips pulled back. Not quite a snarl, just the beginning of one. A warning held in reserve. Then Ellie heard it. Not the wind, not the building settling or snow sliding off the roof. This was different. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Someone was knocking on her door. At midnight. In a blizzard. 20 miles from the nearest town. Ellie's mind went through the calculations automatically. Probabilities. Possibilities. Lost hiker unlikely this late in the season, impossibly stupid in this weather. Broken down vehicle maybe, but why come here instead of staying with the car? Accident possible. Medical emergency more likely. Or something else. The knocking came again. Harder this time. Desperate. Titan growled low in his chest. It was a sound Ellie had heard in combat zones in places where growls meant the difference between living and dying. It meant I know this smell. I know this threat. I'm ready. Stay, Ellie commanded. The dog held position but didn't relax. Ellie crossed to the door, moving with the deliberate quiet of someone who'd spent years learning to be invisible. The floorboards didn't creak under her boots. Her breathing stayed controlled. She could feel her heart rate elevating, not from fear but from preparation. The body getting ready for whatever came next. She reached the door. No peephole, she'd never bothered to install one. She pressed her ear to the wood instead. Please, Faye. The voice was female, young, shaking from cold or fear or both. Please, someone, help. Ellie's hand went to the deadbolt. Training screamed at her to wait, to verify, to establish identity and intent before opening her perimeter to unknown contacts. But another part of her, the part that had spent 11 years keeping people alive, heard the edge in that voice, heard hypothermia, heard shock, heard someone who was maybe 10 minutes from not being able to knock on anything ever again. She threw the bolt and opened the door. The woman fell forward. Ellie caught her on instinct, hands going to support points, shoulder up her arm, checking for injuries even as she registered the blood. Dark stains across the woman's right shoulder, soaking through a sheriff's department jacket that was torn and crusted with ice. The woman's face was bone-white lips, blue eyes unfocused. Inside, Ellie said. Now. She pulled the woman across the threshold. Titan moved aside but maintained his position between them and the open door, head low, scanning the darkness beyond. Snow swirled into the cabin, bringing cold that cut like a blade. Ellie kicked the door shut and guided the woman toward the couch. She was young, late 20s maybe. Blonde hair plastered to her skull with melted snow and sweat. Her uniform said law enforcement, but the badge was missing. Torn off maybe. The name tag read Westfield. Can you hear me? Ellie kept her voice calm, measured. Officer Westfield, can you understand what I'm saying? The woman's eyes tried to focus. Failed. Tried again. Cold, she managed. So cold. Hypothermia, stage 2, maybe stage 3. Core temperature dropping. Body shutting down non-essential systems. Ellie had maybe 20 minutes before organ failure started. She moved fast. First removed the wet clothes. The jacket came off heavy with ice and blood. The uniform shirt underneath was soaked through. Ellie stripped it away, checking the wound as she worked. Gunshot, through and through by the look of it, high on the shoulder, missing the subclavian artery by maybe an inch. Clean entry and exit. Bleeding had mostly stopped. The cold had at least done that much. Tighten blanket. The dog moved immediately, grabbing the wool blanket from the back of the couch in his jaws and dragging it to Ellie. She wrapped Westfield in it, then another blanket from the bedroom, layering warmth against the cold that had sunk into the woman's core. Next, check for other injuries. Ellie's hands moved with practiced efficiency, palpating ribs, checking pupils, assessing capillary refill. Bruising along the left side, probably from a fall. Possible concussion from the way her eyes weren't tracking quite right. But the gunshot was the primary concern. She half-carried Westfield to the chair nearest the stove, positioning her where heat could reach her without burning. The woman's shaking had intensified. Good. Shaking meant the body was trying to generate warmth, meant she hadn't given up yet. Ellie grabbed her medical kit from the shelf above the workbench. She'd kept it current even after leaving the Navy. Some habits you didn't break. Couldn't break. She pulled out gauze, antiseptic pain medication. This is going to hurt, she said, returning to Westfield. But I need to clean this wound. Westfield's eyes found her face. Focus was returning, pulled back from wherever hypothermia had been trying to take her. You're real? Yeah, I'm real. Name's Ellie. You're in my cabin about 20 miles northwest of Kalispell. You're going to be okay, but I need you to stay with me. Can you do that? A nod, slight but there. Ellie worked quickly. She'd done this 1,000 times in worse conditions in sandstorms and firefights, in the bellies of helicopters, while they pitched and rolled in the dark with nothing but a headlamp and prayers. A warm cabin with actual light and time was luxury. She cleaned the entrance wound first, watching Westfield's face for signs of shock. The woman bit down hard but didn't cry out. Good pain tolerance. Training, probably. Or desperation. Talk to me, Ellie said as she worked. What happened? Westfield's breath came in short gasps. They, they found me. I thought I was careful. Thought I'd covered my tracks. Who found you? Department. My own people. Her voice cracked. I've been investigating. God, for 8 months. Missing women. 11 of them. No one was looking. No one cared. So I started looking myself. Ellie moved to the exit wound, cleaner than she'd hoped. And someone didn't like that. My partner. My own partner. Westfield's hands clenched in the blanket. We were doing a routine patrol. He got a call, pulled off the road. Then he pulled his gun. Didn't say a word, just aimed and fired. The antiseptic stung. Westfield hissed but held still. You got away, Ellie said. Barely. I ran into the trees. He came after me, but the storm got worse. I just kept moving, trying to get distance. Then I saw your light. Ellie taped gauze over the wound, securing it firmly. Not a permanent fix, but it would hold. You need a hospital. No, the word came out sharp, final. No hospitals. They'll find me. They're everywhere. In the department, in the courts. I don't know who to trust. Ellie sat back on her heels, studying the woman in front of her, Officer Westfield. Mid-20s athletic build, despite the trauma and hypothermia. Eyes that had seen things they shouldn't have had to see. Ellie recognized that look, had seen it in mirrors. Who are they? She asked. Westfield reached into her pants pocket with shaking hands, pulled out a phone in a waterproof case. The screen was cracked but still functional. She held it up. I have evidence, photos, recordings, warehouse locations, license plates. I've been documenting everything for 8 months, and I know where they're keeping them. Keeping who? The women, the missing women, they're not missing. They're being held, trafficked. Westfield's voice steadied, finding strength in anger. My little sister, Meredith, she disappeared 8 months ago. Vanished from a parking lot in Whitefish. Police said she ran away, said she was troubled. But Meredith wasn't troubled. She was 20, pre-med student. She had a future. Her hands tightened on the phone. So I started looking, and I found a pattern. 11 women in 9 months, all young, all from small towns, all written off as runaways or voluntary disappearances. But they weren't. They were taken. And when I traced the connections, when I followed the money and the movements, it all led back to people in my own department. Ellie stood slowly. Her mind was already working through the implications. Human trafficking ring, law enforcement involvement. That meant organization. Resources. Reach. It meant Westfield wasn't paranoid. She was probably not paranoid enough. You should have gone to the FBI, Ellie said. I tried. I filed a report 6 weeks ago. Anonymous tip. Nothing happened. Then my partner started acting strange, asking questions about what I was working on, where I'd been, who I'd talked to. Westfield met Ellie's eyes. Someone in the FBI told them. Someone tipped them off. Titan moved closer, positioning himself between the two women. His eyes were still on the door, but his body language had shifted slightly. The aggressive tension was easing. Not gone, Titan never fully relaxed, but softening. He'd made a decision. Westfield was packed now, worth protecting. Ellie noticed. She'd learned to trust Titan's judgment more than most people's. What do you want from me? She asked. I don't know. Westfield's voice finally broke exhaustion, bleeding through. I needed to get away, to survive long enough to think. I saw your cabin light, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. Ellie crossed to the window again. The storm showed no signs of stopping. Snow had drifted against her truck, against the woodshed, against everything. Even if she wanted to take Westfield into town, the roads would be impassable. They weren't going anywhere tonight. She turned back. You can stay until the storm clears. After that, we figure out next steps. Relief washed across Westfield's face. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Bryn. Bryn Westfield. Ellie Castellano. Bryn's eyes widened slightly. Castellano. I've heard that name. You were Navy Right SEAL team. There was a commendation a few years back. You saved a kid from drowning in the Flathead River. Ellie's jaw tightened. She didn't like being recognized, didn't like being remembered. That was the whole point of disappearing into these mountains. That was a long time ago, she said. But you did it. You saved him. The kid's father was thanking everyone in town for months. Kind of hard to forget. Yeah, Bryn looked around the cabin, taking in the workshop, the sparse furniture, the deliberate isolation. You live alone, me and Titan. As if on cue, the dog moved to Ellie's side, leaning against her leg. 80 pounds of warm pressure, grounding. Bryn's expression softened. He's beautiful. How long have you had him? 4 years. We deployed together. When I left, he left. Ellie's hand dropped to Titan's head, fingers finding the familiar scars. He'd earned retirement. Bomb detection. Ellie nodded. Titan had been one of the best. Had saved more lives than anyone would ever know of finding IEDs before they could turn vehicles into shrapnel and fire. He'd been hit on his last tour explosion he'd been trying to mark. Got caught in the edge of the blast. The handlers wanted to retire him immediately, but Titan had refused to quit. Kept working until Ellie's deployment ended and she could take him with her. Dogs understood duty better than most people. Bryn shifted in her chair, wincing as the movement pulled at her shoulder. I should probably check my phone, see if they're tracking it. She pulled up the phone, fingers moving across the cracked screen. Her face went white. What? Ellie asked. Bryn turned the phone around. On the screen was a map application, a blue dot pulsing at the exact location of Ellie's cabin. GPS tracker, Bryn whispered. In my badge. I didn't think. I was so focused on running, I didn't check. Ellie's training kicked in immediately. When did you arrive? Maybe 20 minutes ago. And the tracker updates how often, every 5 minutes when it's active. Ellie did the math. If someone was monitoring, they'd seen Bryn stop moving. Seen her stationary at these coordinates. In a blizzard that would buy time, no one was driving mountain roads in zero visibility. But when the storm cleared or even started to ease, they'll come, she said quietly. Bryn looked up, fear naked in her eyes. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring this to you. I wasn't thinking. Titan's head came up. His ears rotated forward, then back, then forward again. Processing. Ellie crossed to the window one more time. The wind had shifted slightly, coming from the east now. Still strong, still carrying snow, but the worst of the storm was probably another hour from passing. After that, the road would still be terrible, but manageable for someone desperate enough. She made a decision. Get whatever rest you can, she told Bryn. We're leaving in 90 minutes. Leaving in this? They won't expect us to move in the storm. That gives us a window. Ellie moved to her bedroom, pulling a go-bag from the closet. She'd packed it the day she moved into the cabin. Old habits. Always have an exit strategy. Always be ready to move. She grabbed her rifle from the locked case, checked the magazine, chambered around. The weight felt foreign after 18 months. Foreign and familiar at the same time. When she returned to the main room, Bryn was standing, despite the obvious pain, despite the exhaustion that made her sway on her feet. I can't ask you to do this, Bryn said. This is my fight, my problem. You don't owe me anything. Ellie looked at her, really looked. Saw someone who'd spent 8 months chasing ghosts of her sister, who'd risked everything to find the truth, who'd been shot by someone she trusted and still hadn't quit. Then she looked at Titan. The dog was watching her, waiting. He'd already made his choice. He'd positioned himself between Bryn and the door, claimed her as pack. And Titan didn't make mistakes about people. You came to my door, bleeding and freezing, Ellie said. That means something. Means I don't get to ignore it. But no buts. You wanted help. You're getting it. Ellie pulled on her coat, heavy canvas lined with fleece. Now get whatever warmth into you that you can. We leave in 85 minutes, and where we're going, we won't have the luxury of a wood stove. Bryn nodded slowly. Where are we going? Ellie shouldered her pack, checked her rifle one more time. Somewhere they won't think to look. And then we're going to figure out who wants you dead badly enough to pull a trigger in a blizzard. Outside, the wind howled. Snow pressed against the windows like something alive trying to get in. The storm that had brought Bryn to her door wasn't finished yet, but neither was Ellie. She'd thought her mission was over when she'd turned in her trident. Thought purpose ended when you chose to walk away from the fight. Titan moved to the door, taking position ready. Maybe purpose didn't end. Maybe it just knocked on your door in the middle of a Montana blizzard, bleeding and desperate and refusing to quit. Maybe the hardest thing and the rightest thing was simply to answer. Ellie checked her watch. 78 minutes until they moved. Outside headlights appeared in the distance, barely visible through the snow, but there, coming closer. She'd been wrong about the timeline. They were already here. The headlights didn't move like search beams. They moved like hunters. Ellie killed the cabin lights with one hand, plunging the room into darkness, broken only by the faint orange glow from the wood stove. Her other hand found Titan's collar, a silent command the dog understood instantly. He dropped low, body coiled ready. "How many vehicles?" Bryn whispered from the couch. Ellie counted the light patterns through the window. The snow made it difficult, turned everything into shifting shapes and shadows. But she'd done this before. Counted enemy positions in sandstorms that made Montana blizzards look gentle. "3," she said. "SUVs, probably. Moving slow but steady. They know the roads." "Local, then. Has to be." That tracked. Whoever was behind this had resources, organization, and enough reach to corrupt an entire department. They'd know these mountain roads in any weather. Would know which routes stayed passable, even in the worst storms. Ellie's mind calculated distances and timing. The vehicles were maybe 2 miles out, crawling through drifts and ice. At their current speed, they'd reach the cabin in 15 minutes. Maybe 20 if the road got worse. Not enough time to run, not with Bryn injured and hypothermic and the storm still raging. They'd be caught in the open, exposed easy targets, which meant they had to fight or disappear. Ellie grabbed her pack, moving with the kind of speed that came from muscle memory older than thought. "Bryn, can you walk?" "I can do whatever I need to do." "Good, because we're leaving. Now." She pulled winter gear from the closet. Extra coat for Bryn, heavier than the torn sheriff's jacket. Gloves, hat, boots that were 2 sizes too big but would work with extra socks. Bryn dressed quickly, her hands shaking from cold and adrenaline, but managing. Titan stayed at the window watching, waiting. Ellie killed the wood stove, scattering the embers, letting the cold start its immediate invasion. Then she grabbed 2 items from her workbench. First, a portable GPS unit, old but reliable. Second, a small device she'd built herself during long winter nights when sleep wouldn't come. Motion sensor wired to a marine flare. Crude but effective. She placed it near the door, angled so anyone entering would trigger it. The flare would buy them maybe 30 seconds of confusion, 30 seconds of advantage. It would have to be enough. "Back door," she told Bryn. "Stay close. Stay quiet. When I move, you move." Bryn nodded, her jaw set despite the fear in her eyes. Ellie opened the back door, slowly letting in wind that hit like a fist. Snow swirled into the cabin, already covering the floor in white. Outside, the world had become nothing but darkness and cold, and the howl of wind through pine trees. She stepped out. Titan followed, then Bryn. The door closed behind them with a soft click that was immediately swallowed by the storm. Ellie oriented herself by memory and instinct. The woodshed was 30 feet east. Beyond that, the tree line. If they could reach the forest, they'd have cover. Terrain advantage. A chance. She moved. Not running. Running in snow this deep would exhaust them in minutes. Instead, she used the high-step march she'd learned in winter warfare training. Lift the knee, plant the foot, shift, wait, repeat. Slower than running, but sustainable. Behind her, Bryn matched the pace, breathing hard but keeping up. Titan ranged ahead, his dark shape barely visible against the white. He knew this drill. Had done it in mountains half a world away when enemy fighters were close and silence meant survival. They reached the woodshed. Ellie pressed against the wall, catching her breath, checking their back trail. The cabin was already disappearing into the storm. Good, that worked both ways. If they couldn't see it, the hunters couldn't see them. She checked the GPS unit. Coordinates locked. She marked their current position, then plotted a course northeast toward the ridge that overlooked the valley. 3 miles. Difficult terrain even in good weather. In a blizzard with an injured woman and hunters on their trail, it would be brutal. But brutal was survivable. Capture wasn't. "Can you make 3 miles?" she asked Bryn. The younger woman's face was already pale with cold and pain, but her eyes were clear, determined. "Yes. Even if I have to carry you the last mile." "I won't need carrying." Ellie almost smiled. "Almost. Let's go." They pushed into the tree line. The forest changed everything. The wind lessened slightly, blocked by dense pine and spruce. The snow fell straighter, no longer driven horizontal, but the darkness intensified, pressing in from all sides. Ellie navigated by compass and memory, following a deer trail she'd hiked dozens of times in daylight. Behind them, distant through the trees, light flared. The cabin. Someone had entered and triggered the flare. 30 seconds of confusion, just like she'd planned. Men would be shouting, covering their eyes, trying to understand what happened. Some would think trap, others would think malfunction. It didn't matter what they thought as long as it bought time. Ellie picked up the pace. The trail climbed, following the ridge contour. Titan stayed close now, sometimes ranging ahead to check the path, sometimes dropping back to ensure Bryn kept moving. The dog understood terrain and tactics better than most people, understood that the pack stayed together, that stragglers died. Bryn stumbled. Ellie caught her before she went down, hands finding purchase on the heavy coat. You good? Yeah, just the shoulder. It's stiffening up. That was the adrenaline wearing off, the pain coming back as the body stopped prioritizing survival over sensation. Ellie had seen it 100 times, knew what came next if they didn't manage it. Stop, she commanded. They'd been moving for maybe 20 minutes. The cabin was probably a mile behind them now, maybe more. Hard to judge distance in the dark. Ellie found a spot where a fallen tree created a small windbreak and guided Bryn into the shelter. I need to check your wounds, she said. We don't have time. We make time. If that wound opens and you bleed out, we're done. Bryn didn't argue. She shed the coat, then the layers beneath hissing as fabric pulled at the gauze. Ellie pulled out a small flashlight, shielding the beam with her hand as she examined the dressing. Blood had seeped through, not arterial, the bright red spray that meant death in minutes, but enough to be concerning. The exit wound had started bleeding again, probably from the exertion and cold. Ellie worked quickly. She packed fresh gauze over the wound, secured it with a medical tape that would hold better than the temporary dressing, then wrapped an elastic bandage around Bryn's shoulder for compression. Not perfect, not surgical, but functional. This is going to hurt, she said, pulling out a small syringe of local anesthetic from her kit. But it'll help. She injected around the wound site. Bryn's breath caught, then steadied. You always carry a full medical kit in the wilderness, Bryn asked. Old habits? Ellie helped her back into the layers. I was a combat medic, carried this kit through 4 deployments, saved lives with it, can't seem to put it down. I'm glad you can't. Titan's head came up. His ears rotated, tracking something in the darkness behind them. Ellie killed the flashlight. Silence. Just wind and the soft hiss of falling snow. Then distant but unmistakable voices. Men calling to each other. Coordinating. The sounds were maybe half a mile back, coming from the direction of the cabin. They're tracking us, Bryn whispered. Ellie listened. The voices weren't panicked, weren't random. They moved with purpose, with organization. Whoever these men were, they knew what they were doing. Can they track us in this snow, Bryn asked. Depends. Our tracks will fill fast, but not instantly. If they have lights and they're looking, they'll find our trail. So what do we do, Ellie thought. They could keep moving, try to outpace the pursuit. But Bryn was injured and tiring. The hunters were fresh. Eventually they'd close the distance, or they could set an ambush. Use the terrain, use the darkness. Take out enough of them to make the rest think twice. But that meant killing, meant crossing a line Ellie had promised herself she wouldn't cross again. Titan made the decision for her. The dog moved away from them, heading not forward along the trail, but perpendicular toward a rocky outcrop barely visible through the trees. He looked back once, eyes catching what little light existed, then continued. Ellie trusted that look. Change of plans, she said. Follow Titan. They moved off the trail, pushing through deeper snow, fighting through underbrush that grabbed at their clothes. The outcrop grew larger as they approached. Not a cliff exactly, but a jumble of boulders and broken rock that created a maze of passages and sheltered spaces. Titan led them into a gap between 2 massive stones. Inside, the wind died completely. Snow couldn't reach them. It was still freezing, still exposed, but it was hidden. A cave. Not natural, but functional. Ellie positioned Bryn in the deepest part where the rocks provided the most shelter. Then she moved to the entrance rifle, ready, and waited. The voices grew closer. Through the falling snow, she saw lights. Flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, sweeping back and forth. Searching. 3 men, maybe 4, moving in a loose formation that suggested training. Not military necessarily, but tactical. Police probably. Or ex-military turned private security. Either way, they were professionals. The beams found the deer trail, found the disturbed snow where Ellie and Bryn had walked. The men stopped conferring. One of them knelt, examining the tracks. 2 people, a voice carried on the wind, moving northeast. Can't be more than 30 minutes ahead. Radio says we need them alive, another voice replied. Both of them. Why both? Westfield's the one with the evidence. Orders from Dalton. He wants whoever's helping her. Wants to know who else knows. Dalton. Bryn had mentioned a sergeant. Ellie filed the name away. The men started moving again, following the trail. They passed within 50 feet of the outcrop, close enough that Ellie could see their faces in the flashlight glow. Young, hard, eyes that had seen violence and didn't flinch from it. She counted 4 total, all armed with sidearms, 2 carrying rifles, professional loadout for mountain pursuit. They moved past, following the false trail deeper into the forest. Ellie waited. Patience was a weapon too. You didn't move until the threat passed completely, until you were sure no one was following, no one was watching. 5 minutes. 10. The forest returned to silence and snow. They'll figure it out eventually, Bryn whispered. When the trail ends or loops back, they'll know we went a different direction. Eventually doesn't matter if we're already gone. Ellie checked her GPS. The ridge was still 2 miles northeast. Beyond the ridge was a valley, and in that valley was an old firewatch station she'd scouted during her first month in Montana. Abandoned, weathered, but it had walls and a roof, and most importantly, it was off any map these hunters would be using. They could hole up there, wait out the storm, figure out next steps. She stood, helping Bryn to her feet. Can you keep moving? Do I have a choice? No. Then I can keep moving. They emerged from the rocks. Titan took point again, nose low, tracking sense that humans couldn't detect. The dog knew these woods better than Ellie did, had spent 18 months exploring while she built furniture and tried to forget what her hands had done in other places. The terrain grew steeper. They were climbing now, really climbing, using roots and rocks for purchase as the ridge loomed above them. Bryn's breathing turned ragged, each exhale a small cloud of vapor that vanished instantly in the cold. Ellie wanted to tell her to rest, wanted to stop and check the wound again, make sure it wasn't bleeding, make sure infection wasn't setting in. But stopping meant dying, so they climbed. Halfway up the ridge, Bryn's legs gave out. She went down hard, catching herself on her good arm, but staying down, unable to rise. I'm sorry, she gasped. I just need a minute. Ellie knelt beside her. Bryn's face was gray with exhaustion and pain. Her eyes had that glassy look that meant shock was trying to pull her under. Listen to me, Ellie said, her voice firm but not harsh. You don't get to quit. Your sister is out there, Meredith. She's waiting for you to find her. You quit now, she stays lost. You understand? Bryn's eyes focused. I'm not quitting. Then get up. I can't. Yes, you can. I've seen people with worse injuries march 20 miles through enemy territory. You can make 2 more miles through snow. I'm not a SEAL. No, but you're a cop who spent 8 months hunting traffickers alone. You're tougher than you think. Ellie stood, extending her hand. Now get up. Bryn stared at the hand. Then slowly she reached up and took it. Ellie pulled her to her feet. Bryn swayed but held. Good, Ellie said. Now walk. They walked. The ridgetop was wind-scoured and brutal. The storm hit them with full force again, driving snow that felt like needles against exposed skin. Visibility dropped to maybe 10 feet. Ellie navigated by compass, alone, trusting the needle, trusting her training. Titan pressed close to Bryn, now his body providing support when she stumbled, his warmth, a small comfort against the killing cold. Down the far side of the ridge, easier going, gravity helping instead of fighting. The valley opened below them, invisible in the darkness but present. Ellie knew it was there the way sailors knew the ocean was beneath them, even in the darkest night. The firewatch station materialized from the snow like a ghost. 2 stories, wood frame weathered to gray, windows broken but walls intact. The tower itself was a skeletal framework rising another 20 feet, crowned with the observation room, where rangers had once spent summers watching for smoke. Ellie led them to the door. It hung on one hinge but still provided access. Inside was darkness and the smell of old wood and animal nests. Better than outside. She pulled out her flashlight, sweeping the interior. Ground floor was mostly intact. Old furniture covered with dust and bird droppings. A rusted stove that probably hadn't worked in decades. Stairs leading up. Second floor, she decided. Harder to reach if someone finds us. Better defensive position. They climbed. The stairs creaked but held. The second floor was smaller, just a single room with broken windows facing all 4 directions. Snow had drifted in through the openings, but one corner was relatively dry. Ellie set her pack down, then helped Bryn to the floor against the wall. The younger woman's eyes were closing already, exhaustion finally winning. Stay awake, Ellie commanded. Just a little longer. She pulled out an emergency blanket, the kind that reflected body heat, and wrapped it around Bryn. Then she checked the wound again. Still seeping but not actively bleeding. The local anesthetic would be wearing off soon and the pain would return in full. From her pack, she pulled out a small butane stove. Not enough to heat the room, but enough to boil water. She started heating snow in a metal cup, adding electrolyte powder once it melted. Drink this, she told Bryn. All of it. Your body needs fluids. Bryn drank, her hands shaking so hard she spilled half of it. Titan curled up beside her, sharing his warmth. The dog's breathing was steady, calm. He'd been through worse. They all had. Ellie moved to the windows, checking sight lines, assessing approaches. The station sat in a clearing, which meant good visibility once dawn came. Anyone approaching would be exposed. That was an advantage. But it also meant they were exposed if someone looked up from the valley. She pulled out the GPS again, confirming their position. Then she scrolled through the coordinates Bryn had shown her earlier, the warehouse locations and patrol routes. One set of coordinates was maybe 30 miles south, close enough to matter. Bryn, she said quietly, the warehouse, the one where you think they're keeping the women. How sure are you? Bryn's eyes opened. I've been watching it for 3 weeks. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures consistent with multiple people. Vehicles come and go on a schedule, always at night, always the same routes. Security, most of them, perimeter fence, guards, maybe 4 on rotation. But the real security is isolation. It's in the middle of nowhere. No one goes there. No one looks. Ellie studied the coordinates, thinking, planning. We can't go to the police, Bryn continued. We can't trust anyone in the department. And the FBI either can't help or won't help. So what do we do? Ellie was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind howled. Snow continued to fall. Somewhere in the darkness, 4 armed men were searching for them, and behind those men was an organization powerful enough to corrupt an entire department. The smart play was to run, to get Bryn somewhere safe, somewhere far from Montana, and let her disappear. Let the evidence disappear with her. But that meant the women stayed missing. Meant Meredith stayed wherever she was. Meant the people doing this kept doing it. Ellie had spent 11 years fighting that kind of evil. Had walked away thinking she was done, thinking someone else could carry that weight. But maybe you were never really done. Maybe you just got better at lying to yourself. She looked at Titan. The dog was watching her, amber eyes reflecting the dim light from the butane stove. What do you think, boy? She asked quietly. Titan's tail thumped once against the floor. Ellie made her decision. We're going to that warehouse, she told Bryn. We're going to confirm your sister is there, and then we're going to get her out. Bryn stared at her. You're serious. You came to my door bleeding and desperate because you were trying to save your sister. I respect that, and I'm not going to let you fail. But how? It's just us. 2 women against who knows how many men. 3, Ellie corrected, nodding at Titan. And I've worked with worse odds. She moved back to her pack, pulling out items and laying them systematically on the floor. Rifle, ammunition, medical kit, radio scanner, GPS binoculars, climbing rope. The tools of her old trade kept current even when she'd pretended she'd never need them again. We wait for the storm to clear, she said. Get you stabilized. Then we recon the warehouse. Confirm the layout, the guards, the routines. We find proof of life. And once we have all that, we make a plan. And if the plan doesn't work, Ellie looked at her. Plans never work. That's why you train until you can adapt. Until you can make decisions under fire. Until you trust your instincts more than your fear. She pulled out her radio scanner, turning it on, cycling through frequencies until she found the one she was looking for. Police band. The voices were staticky but clear enough. Unit 3 to command. Lost the trail at the ridge. Snow's covering everything. Copy that. Return to base. We'll resume at first light. What about the other unit? Still searching the valley. But weather's getting worse. Might have to pull them too. Ellie killed the scanner. They're pulling back. The storm bought us the night. Bryn's eyes were closing again despite her efforts to stay awake. The exhaustion and pain and cold were winning. Sleep, Ellie told her. I'll keep watch. You need sleep too. I'll sleep when you're safe. Bryn wanted to argue. Ellie could see it in her face, but she was too tired, too hurt. Her eyes closed, and within seconds her breathing deepened. Ellie sat by the window, rifle across her lap, watching the darkness. Titan settled beside her, alert but resting. This was familiar. The watching, the waiting, the quiet moments before violence when you had time to think about what you were about to do and whether it was worth it. She'd thought she was done with this, thought she'd traded war for furniture, combat for carpentry. But some things found you no matter how far you ran. Outside, the storm began to ease. The wind was lessening, the snow falling less heavily. By dawn, it would be over. And then the real hunt would begin. Dawn came slowly to the Montana Valley. Not with sudden light, but with gradual gray that seeped between the mountains like smoke. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a world transformed. Snow covered everything in silence. The trees, the rocks, the firewatch station where Ellie had maintained her vigil through the dark hours. She stood at the east-facing window, watching the horizon brighten. Her body ached from the cold and the lack of sleep, but her mind was sharp, alert. She'd learned long ago how to push past exhaustion, how to function, when everything physical screamed for rest. Titan stirred beside her, rising and stretching. The dog moved to check on Bryn, nose nudging her gently. The younger woman's eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition, then to pain as her shoulder made itself known. "Morning," Ellie said quietly. Bryn sat up slowly, favoring her injured side. "Did you sleep at all?" "Enough." "Liar." Ellie allowed herself a small smile. "How's the shoulder?" "Hurts like hell, but I can move it." Bryn demonstrated, rotating her arm through a limited range. She winced, but didn't cry out. "What's the situation?" "Storm's over. Visibility is good, which means we can move, but so can they." Ellie handed Bryn a protein bar from her pack. "Eat. We need to get calories into you." While Bryn ate, Ellie used her binoculars to scan the valley. The morning light revealed terrain she'd only navigated by memory and instinct during the night. Dense forest to the south and east, open meadow to the west. To the north, the ridge they'd crossed, now visible as a white wall of stone and trees. Movement caught her eye. 2 miles out, maybe 3. Vehicles on the forest road. She counted 3 SUVs, the same ones from last night. They'd regrouped, were moving in formation. Searching. "They're persistent," she muttered. "They have to be," Bryn said, moving to join her at the window. "If I get out, if my evidence reaches the right people, the whole operation collapses. They can't afford to let me live." Ellie lowered the binoculars. "Tell me about this Sergeant Dalton." Bryn's expression hardened. "Raymond Dalton, 52 years old, 28 years with the department. Decorated, respected, the kind of cop everyone looks up to. He gave me my badge when I graduated from the academy, told me I'd make a good officer. And now I know he's been running a trafficking operation for at least 8 years, maybe longer, using his position, his connections, his reputation to cover it." She paused. "He's the one who ordered my partner to kill me." "You're sure?" "I heard him on my partner's phone right before the shooting. Didn't realize what I was hearing at the time. But later when I was running, it clicked. That voice giving the order. It was Dalton." Ellie processed this. A systemic villain, not just one corrupt cop, but a network. That meant resources, manpower, the ability to operate with impunity. It also meant vulnerabilities. The larger the conspiracy, the more moving parts, more chances for things to break down. "The warehouse," Ellie said. "How far?" Bryn pulled out her phone, brought up the map despite the cracked screen. 32 miles south, old industrial complex near the railroad. Been abandoned for years or so, everyone thinks. "Who owns it?" "Shell company. I traced it back through 3 layers of paperwork. Eventually leads to a corporation with ties to Dalton's brother-in-law. Family business then. The worst kind." Ellie studied the map, calculating routes and timing. 32 miles in good weather was an hour's drive. In post-storm conditions, with roads still clearing, it would take longer. But manageable. "We need transportation," she said. "Your truck. Probably buried under 3 feet of snow at the cabin. And they know it. They'll be watching it." Bryn looked at her. "So what's the plan?" Ellie was quiet for a moment, thinking through options. Then she made a decision that went against every instinct she'd developed in 18 months of hiding. "We go loud," she said. "We stop running, and we take the fight to them." "How?" "We get to that warehouse. We confirm your sister and the others are there. We document everything. And then we call in someone who can't be bought." "I told you the FBI." "Not all of them," Ellie interrupted. "You filed one report with one office, but I know someone. Old teammate, Garrett Knox. He works with an FBI agent named Vivian Harper. Anti-trafficking task force. They're clean. I'd stake my life on it." "You might be staking both our lives on it." "Yeah, but it's better than dying in this tower waiting for Dalton's people to find us." Bryn considered this. Then she nodded. "Okay, but we need to move now before they widen the search pattern." Ellie agreed. She repacked her gear efficiently, making sure everything had its place. Ammunition, medical supplies, radio scanner, the tools of survival. Titan watched from the doorway, ready. They descended the stairs carefully, Bryn moving slower than Ellie would have liked, but functional. Outside, the morning was cold and still, beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. Ellie oriented herself by the sun and the terrain, plotting a course that would keep them in the tree line, away from open spaces where they'd be visible. The warehouse was south. They'd move parallel to the main road, but never on it. "Stay close," she told Bryn. "Keep pace with Titan. He'll set the rhythm." They moved out. The forest was different in daylight. Less threatening, but more exposed. Every broken branch, every disturbed patch of snow, was a sign that could be read by someone who knew how to look. Ellie did her best to minimize their trail, but there was only so much you could do when moving through fresh snow. 2 hours into the hike, Titan's ears came up. Ellie froze. Behind her, Bryn stopped immediately. The dog's head was cocked, listening to something humans couldn't hear yet. His body language was alert but not aggressive. Not threat, something else. Then Ellie heard it too. Engines. Multiple vehicles. Close. She dropped low, pulling Bryn down with her. Through the trees, she could see a section of the forest road about 200 yards away. The SUVs appeared moments later, moving slowly, windows down. Men with rifles scanning the woods. Searching. Ellie counted 6 men total across 3 vehicles, all armed, all professional in their movements. These weren't just corrupt cops. These were operators. The convoy passed, engines fading into the distance, but they'd be back, sweeping the area in a grid pattern, tightening the noose. "We need to move faster," Ellie said. "I'm going as fast as I can." Ellie looked at Bryn's face, saw the pain there, the exhaustion. The younger woman was running on willpower and not much else. Decision time. "New plan," Ellie said. "We find a vehicle, steal it if we have to, cover the distance fast instead of slow." "Where are we going to find a vehicle out here?" Ellie pulled out her GPS, checking their position against her mental map of the area. There was a ranger station about 3 miles west. Seasonal staff probably empty this time of year. But it would have vehicles, trucks designed for mountain roads and winter conditions. "This way," she said. They changed course, moving west now instead of south. The terrain was rougher, more elevation changes, but Titan navigated it like he'd been born to these mountains. Maybe he had been in some spiritual sense. Dogs understood land and sky better than people. The ranger station appeared through the trees just after noon. Small complex. Main building, garage, equipment shed. A green Forest Service truck parked near the garage. Exactly what Ellie had hoped for. She approached cautiously, rifle ready, scanning for signs of occupation. The windows were dark, no smoke from the chimney, no fresh tracks in the snow except for animal prints. "Wait here," she told Bryn. Ellie circled the perimeter, checking each building. All locked, all empty. The isolation of winter had left this place as abandoned as the firewatch station. She returned to the truck, examining it. Newer model, well maintained. The doors were locked, but that was a problem with solutions. She smashed the driver's side window with the butt of her rifle. The sound cracked through the stillness like a gunshot. Ellie waited, listening for response. Nothing. She reached through, unlocked the door, then examined the ignition. No keys, but that was fine. She'd been trained in field requisition during her SEAL days. There were ways. 3 minutes later, the engine turned over. Bryn climbed into the passenger seat, relief washing over her face. Titan jumped into the back, settling into position like he'd done this 100 times before. Ellie put the truck in gear and drove. The road south was rough but passable. Snow had been plowed at some point, though fresh accumulation had filled in the tracks. The truck handled it easily, 4-wheel drive, digging through drifts with mechanical determination. They made good time. 20 miles in 40 minutes. Then 30 miles. The warehouse coordinates grew closer on the GPS. Bryn sat silent, watching the landscape pass. Her hand kept moving to her shoulder, checking the bandage, feeling for fresh blood. "You doing okay?" Ellie asked. "Just thinking about what we're about to do, about what we might find. Your sister's alive. Hold on to that." "How can you be sure?" "Because if she wasn't, they wouldn't be guarding a warehouse. Dead bodies don't need security. Living prisoners do." It was harsh logic, but it was sound. Bryn seemed to take comfort in it. The GPS showed 1 mile to target. Ellie pulled off the road into a clearing hidden by trees. Killed the engine. Silence settled over them, broken only by Titan's breathing and the tick of cooling metal. "We go in on foot from here," Ellie said. "Recon first. Confirm what we're dealing with before we make any moves." She gathered her gear. Binoculars, camera, radio scanner, the tools of intelligence gathering. They moved through the forest with extreme caution now. Every step was calculated. Every sound was analyzed. This close to the target, any mistake could be fatal. The warehouse emerged from the tree line like a scar on the landscape. Industrial complex, just like Bryn had described. 3 buildings arranged in a rough triangle. Chain link fence topped with barbed wire. Guard shack at the entrance. 2 men visible, both armed. Ellie found a position on a small rise that offered good observation. She lay prone in the snow, binoculars to her eyes, studying every detail. The main building was massive. Corrugated metal sides, high windows, loading docks. A truck was backed up to one dock, 2 men unloading boxes. The second building was smaller. Lights were on inside despite the daylight. Through the windows, Ellie could see movement. People. The third building looked like offices. Several vehicles parked outside. More guards. I count 8 guards, Ellie whispered to Bryn, who lay beside her. Maybe more inside. They're running shifts, which means they're here 24/7. Can you see inside the second building? That's where the heat signatures were strongest. Ellie adjusted her binoculars, focusing on the windows. The glass was dirty, obscured, but she could make out shapes. Women, multiple women, some sitting, some standing, all inside what looked like a converted storage space. Cells. They turned the building into a prison. I see them, Ellie said quietly. I count 9, maybe 10. Bryn's breath caught. Meredith, can you see her? Blonde, 20 years old, 5'6". Ellie scanned the faces. Most were too far away, too obscured. But then one woman moved closer to the window. Young, blonde, the right height. Northeast corner, Ellie said. Blue shirt. Could that be her? Bryn took the binoculars. Her hands shook as she focused. Then her whole body went rigid. That's her, she whispered. Oh God, that's Meredith. Tears ran down her face, but her expression was fierce, determined. Ellie gave her a moment, then gently took the binoculars back. Okay, we have confirmation. Now we document everything. She pulled out her camera, photographing the compound from multiple angles. The guards, the vehicles, the license plates, the women visible through the windows. Every piece of evidence that could be used to destroy this operation. Then she pulled out a small recording device, the same kind she'd given Bryn as backup. I'm going closer, she said. That's too dangerous. I need audio, need proof of what they're saying, what they're doing. Visual evidence can be explained away, but audio of guards talking about prisoners, about trafficking, about Dalton's orders, that's ironclad. Before Bryn could argue further, Ellie was moving. She approached the fence from the east side where shadows from the main building provided cover. Titan stayed with Bryn. This was work that required human precision, not canine support. The fence was 12 feet high. Ellie scaled it in seconds, old training, making her movements smooth and silent. She dropped to the other side, landing in a crouch behind a stack of shipping containers. Voices carried on the cold air. 2 guards, maybe 20 feet away, smoking cigarettes and complaining about the cold. Ellie activated her recording device and listened. Supposed to move them tonight, one guard said. All of them. Nah, just 3. Going to the coast. Ship leaves Friday. Which 3? Dalton's picking. He always picks the pretty ones. Ellie's jaw tightened. Keep talking, she thought. Give me everything. How much longer we gotta babysit these bitches? The first guard asked. Another week, maybe 2. Then we rotate out. New crew takes over. Good, I'm tired of hearing them cry. The second guard laughed. They'll cry a lot more where they're going. Ellie had heard enough. She had their voices, had admission of trafficking, of Dalton's direct involvement, of the operation's scope. She started to withdraw. That's when the alarm went off. Not a siren, a radio call, sharp and urgent, echoing from multiple walkies simultaneously. Perimeter breach, east fence. All units respond. They'd found her. Ellie didn't hesitate. She ran, not back toward the fence that was compromised. Instead, she ran toward the second building, toward the prisoners. If she was going down, she was going down fighting. And maybe, just maybe, she could create enough chaos to give Bryn a chance to escape with the evidence. Guards converged from multiple directions. Shouts. Running footsteps. Ellie reached the building's side door. Locked. She fired her rifle into the mechanism, destroying the lock, then kicked the door open. Inside was a corridor. Fluorescent lights. Concrete floor. She ran down it, rifle up, clearing corners from muscle memory. A guard appeared. Ellie put him down with a precision shot to the leg. Non-lethal, but incapacitating. She kept moving. Another corridor. Another guard. This one got his weapon up. Ellie was faster. 2 rounds center mass. He dropped. She reached a heavy steel door. Through the small window, she could see them. The women. The prisoners. 11 total, not 9. All ages. All terrified. Ellie shot the lock, then threw the door open. Federal agent, she lied. It was easier than the truth. You're being rescued. Stay calm. Stay together. The women stared at her in disbelief. Then one stepped forward. Young, blonde, blue shirt. Are you real? Meredith Westfield asked. Yeah, Ellie said. And your sister sent me. Outside, the guards were closing in. Ellie could hear them coordinating, surrounding the building. She was trapped. They were all trapped. Her radio scanner, still clipped to her belt, crackled to life. All units, this is Agent Vivian Harper, FBI. We have your compounds surrounded. Release your weapons and surrender immediately. Ellie's heart surged. Garrett had come through. She moved to the window. Outside, the scene had transformed. FBI vehicles everywhere. Tactical teams moving in formation. Helicopters overhead. And there, standing near the command vehicle, was Bryn, alive, free. She'd made it out, had called in the cavalry. The warehouse guards were dropping their weapons, hands up recognizing when they were beaten. It was over. Ellie turned back to the women. You're safe now, all of you. Let's get you outside. She led them out of the building through corridors now filled with FBI agents securing the compound. The morning sun hit them as they emerged and several women started crying. Not from fear anymore, from relief. Meredith ran to Bryn the moment she saw her. The sisters collided in an embrace that was all desperation and joy and disbelief. Ellie stood apart watching. Titan appeared at her side, having somehow navigated through the chaos to find her. Good boy, she murmured, hand dropping to his head. Agent Vivian Harper approached. Late 40s gray hair pulled back, eyes that had seen their share of horrors but still held compassion. Ellie Castellano, she said. Garrett told me about you, said you were retired. I was. Not anymore, apparently. Apparently not, Vivian gestured at the compound. We've arrested 8 guards so far, found manifests, financial records, communications. This is going to blow open trafficking operations across 4 states. Dalton? Arrest team is moving on him now. He doesn't know we're here yet, thinks he's safe. He won't be for long. No, Vivian studied Ellie. You did good work here, dangerous work, reckless work, but good. I was just trying to keep someone alive. You did more than that. You freed 11 women. You exposed a network that's been operating for years. You gave these people their lives back. Ellie looked at the women being assessed by paramedics, wrapped in blankets, reuniting with hope they'd thought was lost. Meredith and Bryn were still holding each other, still crying. Their sister did that, Ellie said. Bryn, she's the one who wouldn't quit, who risked everything. I just helped her finish what she started. Vivian nodded. Still, the offer stands. We could use someone with your skills. The fight against trafficking, it's not over. It's not even close to over. Ellie was quiet. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to dive back into that world where her training mattered, where she could make a difference. But another part remembered why she'd left. Remembered the wait. I'll think about it, she said. Fair enough. 6 hours later, Ellie sat in an FBI mobile command center giving her statement for the 4th time. The details never changed. The story held together because it was true. Bryn was in another vehicle being treated for her gunshot wound by proper medical staff. She'd be fine. The wound had stayed clean, the bleeding minimal. Ellie's field medicine had bought her the time she needed. Through the window, Ellie watched FBI agents loading the last of the evidence. Boxes and boxes of documents, computers, hard drives, everything needed to dismantle the operation completely. Her phone rang. Garrett Knox. You're insane, he said without preamble. Hello to you too. I send you into retirement to make furniture, and 18 months later, you're assaulting a trafficking compound. I wasn't assaulting it, I was conducting reconnaissance. With a rifle. Tools of the trade, Garrett laughed despite himself. Vivian says you're a natural, says you should join the task force. Vivian says a lot of things. You considering it? Ellie looked at Titan, who lay at her feet, finally resting after 2 days of constant alertness. The dog's eyes were closed, but his ears still tracked every sound. Still ready. I don't know, she said honestly. I thought I was done. Thought I'd found peace up here. And then someone knocked on your door. Yeah. That's how it works, Ellie. Purpose finds you whether you're looking for it or not. She knew he was right, had known it the moment she'd opened her door to find Bryn bleeding in the snow. I'll think about it, she told Garrett. That's all I'm asking. The sun was setting when they finally released her. Bryn was waiting outside the command vehicle, arm in a proper sling, looking exhausted but whole. They're keeping Meredith overnight for observation, Bryn said. But she's going to be okay. They all are. Good. Because of you. Because of both of us. Bryn smiled. I'm not going to argue semantics with a Navy SEAL, but thank you for everything, for not turning me away, for believing me, for fighting when you didn't have to. You would have done the same. Maybe, but you actually did it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the FBI team's work. What happens now? Bryn asked. Now you heal. You give testimony. You help put these people away forever. And you, Ellie shrugged. I go back to my cabin, fix the door they probably kicked in, make some furniture. That's it. After all this, that's it. But even as she said it, Ellie knew it wasn't quite true. 6 months later, Ellie stood on her cabin porch, sanding a table she'd built from reclaimed barnwood. The Montana summer was in full bloom, warm and green and alive. Titan lay in the grass chasing dreams. A truck appeared on the road. Forest green, FBI markings. Vivian Harper stepped out carrying a folder. Agent Harper, Ellie greeted. I'm not here officially, Vivian said. Just wanted to update you. Dalton and 17 other officers were sentenced last week. Federal trafficking charges, life sentences, all of them. Good. The investigation expanded. We've recovered 19 additional victims from connected operations. 47 total arrests. The network is done. Ellie nodded. She'd followed the case in the news, watched the dominoes fall. Bryn Westfield made detective, Vivian continued, leading a new anti-trafficking task force. She's good at it, really good. She earned it. Vivian set the folder on the porch rail. That's for you. Open it or don't. Your choice. She started to leave. What's in it? Ellie asked. Vivian turned back. Another case. Missing teenager in Wyoming. Sheriff's department won't investigate. Family thinks corruption. It's probably nothing. But then again, that's what they said about Bryn's case. She left the folder and drove away. Ellie stood looking at it for a long time. Then her phone buzzed. Text from Bryn. Whatever Vivian gave you, say yes. We need you. Ellie picked up the folder, opened it. Inside was a photo of a girl, 16 years old, blonde, smiling, missing. Titan stood sensing the shift in Ellie's energy. The dog moved to her side, ears up, ready. Ellie looked down at him. What do you think, boy? One more mission. Titan's tail wagged once. Ellie pulled out her phone, dialed Vivian's number. Send me the coordinates, she said when the agent answered. You're sure? Ellie looked at the sunset painting, the mountains golden red, looked at her cabin, at the peaceful life she'd built. Then she looked at the photo again, at the girl who needed help. I'm sure, she said, because maybe retirement was just another word for waiting. Waiting for the knock on the door. Waiting for someone bleeding and desperate to remind you who you really were. Ellie Castellano had spent 18 months making furniture, building things with her hands, creating order from chaos. But some chaos couldn't be solved with sandpaper and patience. Some chaos required action. She packed her go bag, the same one she'd grabbed that night in the blizzard, still ready, always ready. Titan jumped into the truck without being told. He knew. Dogs always knew. As they drove toward Wyoming, the sun setting behind them, Ellie felt something she hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Not the purpose she'd chosen, not the quiet satisfaction of a well-made chair or a perfectly sanded table, but the purpose that chose her, the kind that knocked on doors in the middle of storms, the kind that wouldn't let go once it found you. The highway stretched ahead, empty and dark. Somewhere in Wyoming, a girl was missing. A family was desperate. A system was failing, and Ellie Castellano, former Navy SEAL, former combat medic, former furniture maker, was going to fix it. Not because she wanted to, because she had to, because some people don't get to quit. They just choose where to stand. The mission continued. It always would,